Hey guys, unless you've been living under a rock these past few days, I'm sure you'll know Apple unveiled the new iPhone, actually two new iPhones, the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus. They also announced the Apple iWatch, but I'm going to leave that alone for now. The main differences between the two phones is the screen size. The 6 is a 4.7 inch display, the Plus is a 5.5 inch display. So big screen increases in both cases. There are some other differences between the models which I'll go through as well, but yeah, I wanted to walk you through the specs and some of the new features, and just to give my initial impressions and thoughts about these two devices. And don't forget to leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Yeah, let's go ahead and check it out. Now, I actually didn't think Apple were going to release both versions at the same time, but they did, and we now have a choice of screen size for the iPhone. Gone are the days of Apple saying 3.5 or 4.0 inches was the perfect size. We've now jumped to 4.7 and 5.5. The design has a slight refresh. It's a little more curved around the edges, but mainly it still holds that same quintessential Apple iPhone design. You still have the physical home button with the Touch ID included, of course. You can see from this official advert that the main focus is, of course, on the screen size first and foremost. And talking about the screen, they announced Retina HD. Now what this actually means is the 4.7 version has a 1334 by 750 resolution with what Apple like to call the magic number, 326 pixels per inch. The 6 Plus, however, jumps to full 1080p, 1920 by 1080 with a PPI of 401. So actually above Apple's famous 326 PPI, which is quite interesting. If we take a look at the iPhone 5S, that was running a resolution of 1136 by 640. You can see how many pixels that was pushing. The standard HD 720p you can see is 1280 by 720, and the iPhone 6 is running a little bit above that. You can see just how many pixels more it's going to be pushing than standard 720p. Now the iPhone 6 Plus running its full HD resolution is actually pushing over double the amount of pixels than the iPhone 6. In terms of performance, we'll have to see what impact that extra resolution will have. In gaming it may make a difference, especially considering it's a lot more stress on the GPU pushing that higher resolution. We'll have to wait and see. Now, comparing these resolutions to the latest Android phones, well, 1080p is nothing new to Android, and the latest devices are even pushing Quad HD now. What's interesting is the 4.7 inch iPhone 6 is still only pushing 750p, whereas the nearly year-old Nexus 5 has a full 1080p screen. The iPhone 6 Plus is a little more comparable, but being a phablet, it's in the Note 4 range, and you can see that's pushing Quad HD with a crazy high 515 PPI as well. If you're wondering just how many more pixels Quad HD has over 1080p, I've added it to the bottom of the list here. You can see it's quite a significant amount. Taking a closer look at the design, I mentioned before that it holds a very similar look to previous iPhones, but it has undergone some changes. The buttons look a little different, a little more sleek and less clunky. Overall, the shape is more rounded to help accommodate the larger size, so it feels more comfortable in the hand. You'll also notice the camera does protrude a fair bit from the device. I'm not a massive fan of that, but I guess people will get used to it or use a case. But overall, I'm a fan of the design. It looks very well made, and it looks like a premium device as always. Checking out the thickness here, both the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus are thinner than the iPhone 5S, which is quite nice. It helps that sleek design. You'll also notice here the difference in the button design between the iPhone 5S and the iPhone 6, and also take note of the more rounded corners as well. Now moving on to the camera, they added a new sensor with something called focus pixels, which without boring you is meant to help make autofocus faster and better. It's still an 8 megapixel shooter with the same pixel size and aperture of the iPhone 5S. Now I know it's not all about the megapixels, but I was still pretty disappointed about the camera in general. They've also added some software features like face detection and exposure control. A nice addition is that of OIS, or optical image stabilization. We've seen that on some Android devices. It should help taking sharper photos easier, offsetting a shaky hand, but be aware that OIS is only available on the iPhone 6 Plus model. It's not available for the 4.7 iPhone 6. In terms of video recording, it does 1080p at 60 frames per second and slow-mo at 720p at 240 frames per second, and that's pretty impressive. I love slow motion on phones, it's a great feature. The front-facing camera's been upgraded to support FaceTime HD as well with a larger f2.2 aperture, and it's said to let in around 81% more light overall. In terms of the battery specs, I wasn't that impressed with the 4.7 inch iPhone 6 stats. It doesn't really show much of an improvement over the iPhone 5S. Of course, it is running a larger, higher resolution screen, so you've got to take that into account. But overall, I think it's going to have very similar battery life to the 5S, which wasn't that great. A number of sites are reporting the iPhone 6 has a 1810 mAh battery. That's about 300 milliamps more than the iPhone 5S, which will probably offset the bigger screen and higher resolution, leaving it with pretty much the same battery life. The iPhone 6 Plus, however, shows a more significant improvement proven, and sources are saying it has a 2915 mAh battery, so even though it's running a larger screen and a higher resolution than the iPhone 6, it's still getting better battery life. But stats like this in an announcement are always a little bit skewed, so we'll have to see how it holds up for real world usage when it's released. And yes, Apple have finally added NFC to their devices. They've got something called Apple Pay, which is very similar to Google Wallet, but hopefully we'll see NFC be adopted by mainstream a lot quicker now. It's kind of cool how it works. It also uses Touch ID to actually authenticate the transaction, so you can't just go ahead and tap anyone's phone. You'll have to use Touch ID to make the actual transaction go through, which just makes it a little bit more secure. Now, if we check out this table between the iPhone 6 Plus, the Galaxy Note 4 and the LG G3, the first thing I want to bring your attention to is the dimensions. You see that the iPhone 6 Plus is the tallest device here. It's taller than the Note 4, so it is a very big device. It's not quite as wide, but it's pretty much comparable, and it's definitely thinner than the Note 4. If we take a look at the LG G3, which actually has the same size screen, 5.5 inches, you'll see that the LG G3 is significantly smaller in both height and width. Now you can see here a table of the new iPhone devices versus the top of the line Android devices, and I'll just leave this on the screen while I tell you my thoughts about the device. You can make of these stats what you will. Basically, I was overall disappointed with Apple's announcement. Yes, I know iPhone is not all about specs or anything like that, but I just don't think they did enough with it. For example, the iPhone 6, the 4.7 screen version, it still has a 720p display. Now that would annoy me personally because, you know, it can record in 1080p using the camera, but it can't play that back natively on the screen, and the same thing with 1080p YouTube clips. Now, the iPhone 6 Plus has the full 1080p display, but it's a phablet and it's just too big for me personally. I literally wouldn't be able to use it. I even printed off a template to see how big it would be in my hand, and it was just ridiculously too large. Personally, I would have much preferred to have seen all the specs of the iPhone 6 Plus, but in that 4.7 inch body. For example, the 1080p display, the optical image stabilization in the camera, and of course the bigger battery life as well. That would have been absolutely awesome, but that wasn't quite how it turned out. If you're coming from the iPhone 5S, then yeah, I think it's a decent upgrade. I think it's a better upgrade if you go for the iPhone 6 Plus, considering it's got a higher resolution screen, optical image stabilization, and better battery life. But it all depends if you can handle that size. So yeah, there you go guys, that's the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus and my initial thoughts on the devices. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Peace out.